Dear students and colleagues, I have a great pleasure and honor to present you a professor and the teacher of the LCC International University, Mrs. Misha Kantu-Blake, who traveled from Lithuania to us and have a very interesting life experience about documentary and how to work with narratives, and also how to move on with film studies and how it could be interesting, especially in the academical way of criticism. Not to do a great pass and not to take the possibility to present herself, Misha Kantu-Blake, please.
And thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here. LCC University in Klaipėda, Lithuania is the institution that I'm currently teaching at. I am with the I teach in the communications journalism department, and during the springtime I teach documentary filmmaking, and in the fall I will be teaching screenwriting. A little bit about my background. I have over 14 years of professional experience within filmmaking, and currently my husband and I are making a documentary about Ukraine, and so we really love Lviv, we love Kyiv, and this is such a sincere honor and pleasure to be out here specifically in Lviv. So thank you so much for having me. And today I will be teaching about the Trisection of film studies, and this is going to be a very general overview as opposed to anything too hyper-specific. However, I feel it will provide and impart onto you a kind of brief overview as far as understanding how you can enter into the film world, how you can utilize your own lens, and what specific area you might find that you like most. As we said, there will be a specific venture into academic film criticism, and that also is a cross-study with TV studies. There will also be a portion on narrative film production, and these are the most typical types of films that you see in theaters. And then also I will speak about documentary, my wheelhouse, which is considered also non-fiction production. So within the industry, this is typically how you have film schools like my alma mater. I got my master's in film and TV production at the University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts, that's located in Los Angeles, and has produced such alumni as George Lucas, for example. And I went down the specific documentary track. However, there are also production, criticism, and there are many new as well type of majors and electives that you're able to choose, given that there is constant change and innovation within the industry, also through animation and through 3D effects. And so I'm going to begin with film criticism and TV studies. And I selected this particular image because at the end of this is in Hollywood, is the Chinese theater. And with a previous documentary that I directed titled Steam Dream, I had the pleasure of screening at the Chinese theater. And Hollywood is its own world, and I thoroughly recommend being able to visit it if you're able to. However, it is a bit much. Okay, film criticism. So when you hear criticism, one is often thinking that perhaps this means a sort of Rotten Tomatoes style rating system. However, this is not what film criticism as far as studies involves. It is a cultural, artistic, political, commercial context of media creation being more so than just films, right? That also includes YouTube videos or things that you see on TikTok or Instagram. Circulation, meaning the distribution therein. What type of platforms are you viewing this media? And consumption, how do we ingest and what do we interpret? There are also many cross studies with history and ethnicity, communication, comparative literature, gender and sexuality, art history. So there's a lot of ways where you're able to infuse it with your academic studies because you want to be able to produce information that can be cross-checked and be factual and create something robust, no matter how creative you're wanting to be. Being able to have a foundation within any one of these studies will produce work that is all the more authentic and will stand the test of time. For example, 2001 Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick, stands the test of time because of how infused it is with so many academic ways of being able to take it apart. And it's a very popular film in film criticism to be able to dissect. So researchers within this field produce retrospective books, anthology film series. You see quite a few on The Shining, which is also directed by Kubrick, or talks at respective academic institutions. So if you're interested in watching films and taking them apart, there's a lot of ways that you can create jobs and professions out of that interest. And these are just a few that I mentioned, but there's a definite place within not only academia, but just popular culture to be able to do so. And even if this is not the actual direct route you want to take, if you're armed with a vast historical and contemporary knowledge of film, you can transition into production, meaning you can transition into making films, because now there's no reinventing the wheel. There's no, well, I want to make a type of Gone with the Wind thing. You already know and understand Gone with the Wind, so you can make something different. So means of ascertaining, aka how to engage in film studies. So there are, of course, intense surveys of film genres, ranging from romance to drama to horror, sci-fi, or if you're getting hyper-specific, sci-fi time travel, right? And I had the pleasure of, at USC, taking a specific time travel course, and it was just really enlightening to be able to see how the perfect time travel film would be considered like the last film made, because you would just recirculate and recircumvent. So these types of rabbit holes that you can go down are really exciting, and they can mean so much about us and how we cooperate within society. So they're very fruitful. It's not just a superficial type of endeavor. There's also surveys of auteur filmmakers. An example of an auteur would be like Wes Anderson. When you see a Wes Anderson film, you understand you're watching a Wes Anderson film because of the symmetry and the color palette, right? Alfred Hitchcock was another auteur. He had these horror, Psycho, right, is one of his most famous film dramas. And then Christopher Nolan is one of the most recent iterations. Being able to see what they're doing, it provides cultural context and a means of understanding, well, what was going on? How are people feeling about it? Because often directors like this transpose it within their films. So there are 4 types of film analysis. We're getting into the pretty nitty-gritty, aka the brass and tacks. But this is just to help you understand if you were to do a thesis, right? Or if you were to wanting to apply to film PhD or film MFA, you would have to showcase one of these types of analytical structures for film criticism. The first is semiotic analysis. So that just means what types of objects are repeated throughout the film. If you've seen Christopher Nolan's Inception, there's of course the spinning top, and that is just to showcase, is this real or is this not? And then that's, sorry, spoiler alert, but that's the main context of the ending. How does the director associate a character with certain colors, signs, or language? That is its own huge field that is involved with production design, with set deck, which is set decoration, costume. So really any type of interest that you have within fashion and so on and so forth, you can absolutely insert yourself within film and be very much needed. What messaging does this send to the viewer? Because really that's what it comes down to. How are you interacting with your audience? What are you telling them? What do you want them to get from it? What is the message, deep within your heart that you are wanting to be able to convey to your audience. There is also narrative analysis. So right now, you are breaking down the screenplay, the narrative, the 3-act structure. So quite often, films like Star Wars, for example, they are constructed on the hero's journey. This is something that was proposed by Jung, and you see this whole arc where they start as an outsider, and then they have within this journey someone who is a total like wizard type of character, Yoda, for example, in Star Wars, and then they come around all the way to the bin where they come back with their newfound knowledge, having gone through the hero's journey. It's a breakdown of the plot development, right? And so the screenwriter is the basis of the narrative analysis. The third is the cultural historical means of analysis. So how does film comment on social and political issues at the time it was released? And how might a biographical understanding of the film creator inform this film? So what's important from this is to get that no movie, no film is ever created in a vacuum. There's so much that goes into it, and who you are as a person and how you see yourself will inform the type of content that you create. And so being able to know someone's background will help you better understand what they're conveying within their film, because it's so multi-layered and there's so much to glean from it that you will come out all the better, I feel, at the end if you are able to enter in with these types of analyses. And finally, there's mise en scène, which is just French for how the scene is composed. So this is like production design and the cinematographer's artistic choices. Okay, to provide an example, this is body horror, and I'm going to briefly show Videodrome, a 1980s film, versus The Ring, the 2001 iteration. So in 1983, another auteur, David Cronenberg, directed Videodrome, and it stars Debbie Harry, who's the lead singer of Blondie. And it's an incredibly interesting sci-fi film that talks about how the violence portrayed within the typical TV type show is able to like come through and transpose itself to those who are watching and viewing, and the main character becomes obsessed. And in the lower corner of this, the red image, you can see that he has a whip, and the violence that he is physically exerting is having an effect on the TV image. And it's just an incredibly fascinating means of being able to enter into what would normally be an academic context of horror within TV and make it physical, body horror. So in 2002, directed by Gore Verbinski, you have The Ring, and this is based off of a Japanese manga, right? But here again, you have where there was some event, there was some trauma that transpired, and it renders where the character herself is climbing out of the TV, and it makes for pretty scary horror. But to be able to see the genesis, to be able to see from 1983, you are able to thereafter see, well, The Ring has a cooler color palette. Why is that? How did horror change from the bright reds that we saw in the 80s to now it's these cool, almost water tones, and how does that inform the film as a whole? And then you have what is considered techno-surrealist, right? TV is a monster, and from these two films, you're able to supply this techno-surrealist type of genre. So Cronenberg depicts how thin the membrane is between violence on screen and in our lives, the possibility of it being that thin, right? So The Ring plays on visual fears manifesting into physical horrors. In both films, the horror is completely unstoppable. So there is no happy resolution at the end of either of these. And as far as it popping up in other manifestations, not just feature films, you also have in the music video in 1997 by Aphex Twin, who is an Irish DJ, Come to Daddy, and you can see a very similar looking creature who came out of the TV. And just as a side note, in Thor, Love and Thunder, there's, what is his name? I'm forgetting his name right now. But anyway, this actor, he copied the exact same look as the Aphex Twin, Come to Daddy. He was the guy in American Psycho. Christian Bale, that's his name. So now we're, this is a slide to just comment on ingestion of the media, awareness of the strings, and understanding that everything has had so much forethought and needed to pass through so many green lights to be able to be created, that it's not to be taken lightly, that you are to understand that what you're seeing is very finely tuned and crafted and has a definite narrative that they're wanting to transpose onto you. And the Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales is there because fairly often this is the origin of a lot of these monomyths and types of stories. Okay, so now we're moving on to narrative film production. And it's first and foremost important to realize that there are 3 stages, right? First, there's pre-production. That's where you are amassing your crew and the producer really shines. Then you have production, where you're actually creating the film. And then you have post, which is editing. And that's what I do. I'm an editor right now. So there are 2 types of crew. There's above the line, which are producers, directors, cinematographers. And then you have below the line, gaffers, grips, set design. And this is merely to say those who are involved from pre to post, and those who have their job within production, they shine, and then they move on to the next. So there is just all these people coming together to be able to produce one script based on an IP, which is short for intellectual property. And intellectual properties range from comic books to novels to TV tropes. And these screenplays, there are only 7 basic plots or monomyths from which you can essentially draw. There's this wonderful, huge tome written by Christopher Booker called The 7 Basic Plots, in which you can really take a deep dive and see which of each of these that he lays out. But I'm in total agreement that there are these 7. The first being overcoming the monster. Examples are like Dracula, Jaws, Star Wars, in which our hero needs to face his innermost fears that have manifested within a physical entity. Then there's rags to riches, like Cinderella and Aladdin, where there was some problem within their own personality, like Cinderella having to deal with her new orphanhood, and this journey that they're having with over-the-top, usually, type of antagonists allows them to realize their own inner beauty. You have the quest, like, of course, Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones, in which there's usually a MacGuffin, meaning some type of little item, like a ring, that they need to be able to acquire, but the ring isn't the beginning and end of the story. It's really about their character arcs, the quest. Then you have Voyage and Return, which is like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and allows for all kinds of world building. You have the comedy, like The Big Lebowski, and comedy is, just so you understand, it just means that the ending is, it's a happy ending, it's not a tragic ending, as opposed to it inherently needing constant laughter and humor. You have the tragedy, like Romeo and Juliet, where the highs that were experienced by the characters all are front-loaded, and then things just begin to get continually worse. And then the final of the 7 is rebirth, like Beauty and the Beast, The Frog Prince, in which people are able to really find themselves and transpose the inner beauty and attenuated exterior. Oh, so we have all kinds of, this over here is able to show you the call to adventure, the hero's journey, and you're able to actually see it as a scaffolding, right? So if you yourself are interested in writing screenplays or even novels or novellas, and I didn't mean to use the word even because that is quite the task in itself, but if you're interested in writing any type of literature, this is a wonderful means of being able to have it as bullet points, and then you can enter your own type of ideas or experiences that you've had, and then there you go, you have write a screenplay that you're able to arm yourself with and continue forthwith. And then as far as this, your all-purpose guide to epic movies, this is just showing the type of archetype that you will see fairly often, especially in tentpole films. Tentpole meaning that over the summer there's one film that gets the most type of commercials and marketing campaigns, and you see the toys involved in McDonald's. Those tentpole films will usually have archetypes of the hero, like Harry Potter, the ancient mystagogue, which I was talking about earlier as Yoda, the enemy, right, Voldemort, the threshold guardian, meaning the first problem, right, so that the hero has the first chance to prove themselves, the shapeshifter, meaning a character who was previously ambiguous as far as are they a good guy or are they a bad guy, and then it turns out that sure enough they are a good guy. And then the trickster, so someone for like usually comedic effect and comedic relief, and to offset the dramatic tension, meaning that you're able to get some reprieve from the main tension that's going on in the film. Okay, so tailoring your strengths on set. Let's say that you're interested in production, you're interested in making movies. This is a fantastic quote by this actor. The success of the film is down to the crew, right? Films are not made in a vacuum, they're not made in a void. It's not a one-person endeavor. It definitely can be, but that's more rare. And it's just incredible to be able to collaborate and work with various types on a set. So I definitely recommend getting a full, robust crew. But let's say that you are more so of a visual type of learner. You enjoy being able to see as opposed to like reading or hearing. Storyboard artist, which is a perfect opportunity for you to be able to visualize and draw out how you want the scene to go, and then have, now that you're armed with these storyboards, have them available to give to your cinematographer so that they can replicate it. Cinematographer, of course, the main deal with the camera, and there are also assistant cameras and other people who need to come alongside the cinematographer to execute. And then in post-production, you have the color corrector. They're looking at all of the scenes and they're able to make it more cohesive by tracking the color. Well, is it autumn? This shot looks too green. We need to desaturate. These types of things. If you're more of an auditory type of learner, music composition, right? Music is able to infuse so much feeling and emotion within films. It's really essential. Half of a film is sound. If you're on set, boom operator, right? You're helping the external sound recorder, and you are so essential. Often you'll hear people say, don't dip into frame. That just means that the Zeppelin is coming into the top of the frame. It's very important that you are strong boom op, and then sound designer in post-production, which just means that you are not only getting music and dialogue, but also what does the atmosphere sound like? Is there a dog in the background, or do you need to remove the dog bark from the background? All these things. There are, if you're more of a reader or writer type of learner, screenwriter of course, or if you're on set, script supervisor, meaning that you are maintaining continuity, and if an actor forgets their lines, you can feed it to them. And then in post-production, you'll work on titles. And let's say you are a kinesthetic or more of a feeling type of learner, then of course on set, gaffer's grips, an essential part. All of these are essential parts of the crew, but just tailored to what you feel more comfortable with. All right, so now we are moving away from narrative filmmaking to documentary filmmaking, and this is our third of the Trisection. So, first and foremost, where do you get your ideas? Documentary filmmaking is a lot like journalism in that you are securing real-life stories. However, it's very different from journalism in that you are able to spend time and infuse it with creativity. What I've shown here is that it doesn't matter where you source. If you find someone on Instagram that is particularly compelling to you, if there's something that you feel that you see in nature or that you see going on within your city, and it's compelling you to be able to share this, of course, this is it's of complete importance, right? It's important for you to have your voice and to say what it is that you want to. These three images over to the right is this particular researcher believes that a meteor fell in the middle of the ocean, and he has all this money that he's going to go out and find it and be able to see whether it is of alien origin or not. And so sourcing stuff from the news, right? That's a huge means of being able to start creating documentary films. So nonfiction storytelling. These are the different types of documentary films that you see either in theaters, on YouTube, on Amazon Prime. It's just a wonderful means of being able to enter into someone's life or into a historical event and be able to really see, all right, what was going on. First and foremost, we have poetic documentaries. These focus on moments or on feelings. And they can have no narration. They can have wall-to-wall narration, but poetic just means that they're less of the classical hero's journey and more so focusing on emotions. Then you have expository. These are most typically what you see on the History Channel or the Discovery Channel. They're very straightforward narration. Then you have observational documentaries. This is cinema verite style that allows the audience to come to their own conclusions. So it's more of like fly on the wall, right? You are able to watch and see, and then in the edit you allow people to piece together, oh, this is what's going on in this person's life. There's also participatory documentary, and this is where the filmmaker themselves, for example, like Michael Moore, this is where you include yourself within the narrative. So you are participating, and that's why it's participatory. You're out there either picketing or so on and so forth. It's more so participating than just the mere narration. And then there's reflexive, where the entire film is about the filmmaker. It's about either something that they want to share about their past or something that they're currently going through, and so the camera is always trained on themselves. And usually this is either a super small skeleton crew or just themselves. And the final form is performative, where you're able to have either reenactments, where you need to have a production of hiring actors and hiring crew, or you just straight up have something that is completely different but requires you to have a narrative crew. So at LCC International University, we have all of these different majors, but this is not just at LCC, of course, right? All kinds of institutions have these various means of being able to enter into university. And this is just a method to be able to say your traditional major, how it can translate into something within the film world, right? So let's say you're an English literature major, screenwriting, or you are someone who is majoring in business, of course producing. If you are someone in communication or journalism, I would say documentary would be the tightest fit. Or you're someone who's majoring in international relations. There's a whole distribution model where you're able to go to different countries and you're able to say, well, this is why this film would be a good fit for you, and provide an array for their TV, either TV broadcast or for their VOD. Psychology, film analysis, right? Character studies or auteur studies, and then theology, world building, production design. So this is just what you're doing for your films, set decoration. Minority Report is a wonderful example of a world build that I believe superseded the actual narrative. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. So it's directed by Steven Spielberg. However, the production designer Alex McDowell, I feel, did such a fabulous job being able to bring alongside all of these scientists and leaders in their field and seriously ask them, what are your projections of the future, and be able to, through movie magic, create that and put into the production. Okay, so I hope that this was something of interest and new ways for you to dissect your movie nights and opportunities to enhance your own content, whether you're putting content out on YouTube or on Instagram, or you have your sites set for theatrical releases, and just a means of being able to further develop your artistic sensibilities. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I have a question.
Yes.
A couple of.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, many of them. So my first question will be, future films are constantly transforming, and which is not so noticeable with documentary films. So in your opinion, how have the trends in documentary making changed in recent years?
Documentary filmmaking transforming in recent years. I think that's a fabulous question. Thank you very much. I think we've moved away from participatory. I think that this is more so like something that people would find as dated. Like, for example, Michael Moore. You see a Michael Moore film and it's unable to translate, this is my personal opinion, translate into current times. And I feel that more so we're wanting to lean towards observational documentaries right now. We have this mass influx, kind of an oversaturation of media and material available at our fingertips. You can go online and get all kinds of information, right? But as far as how you're able to curate that information and how you're able to lay it out in a succinct manner so that you're able to understand some truth or some monomyth, something that you're trying to convey, right? I feel that observational is more akin to, or rather, it's more apropos to today's means of being able to understand and ingest, because we want to see, we're able to have our own types of conclusions that we're able to draw, and it's just from our lens, who we are as a person. But if we're just able to see and observe, I think we're able to formulate informed decisions based off of that. So I would say that's more modern, observational.
And also online, one question. Which directors are you most inspired and why?
Oh, this changes all the time because there's such a vast array of directors who, depending on where you are in your life, right? If you're in your 20s versus your 30s versus your 40s, who is it that you're able to respond to? And I would say currently, for me, it's probably Kubrick, and that's why I brought him up a couple of times. And I think the reason for that is being able to track Stanley Kubrick's trajectory. He started as a street photographer in New York, and then he was thereafter able to get into documentary filmmaking. And then after that, after showcasing his just huge tenacity and the way that he really white knuckles productions, which makes him an auteur, right? I'm just fascinated by how he made the leap from street photographer to this narrative filmmaker who makes these productions that really stand the test of time. And you can do such a deep dive into every single one, from Dr. Strangelove to Lolita. And particularly right now, The Shining is something that I'm trying to dissect. But for me, probably right now, yeah, Stanley Kubrick. Thank you.
And the last one. I know that you have your documentary, so Steam Dream, yeah?
Yeah.
I watched like a little feature of that, yeah.
Thank you.
And I have like a tricky question. What's your biggest no-no in making documentaries? Because you like director, yeah, and you know in practical like space of it.
Biggest no-no. Thank you, and thank you for watching. That was it was really fun to make Steam Dream. I would say a biggest no-no is taking the power that you have as far as the director and as far as the person with the lens and abusing that power. So people are making themselves incredibly vulnerable in documentary spaces, even more so, I would say, than in narrative spaces, because it's their actual lives and it's who they actually are that they're depicting in front of you, and they're answering your interview questions. And the biggest no-no, I would say, is taking what they're saying, their interviews, and taking it out of context and then editing it in a manner that is totally untruthful for what they were meaning to be able to say. And I don't know any specific situation right now, but I have seen in the past where people take it to make them look dumb or stupid or something that is totally not how they were trying to be able to convey themselves. And I even feel that this has come to a place where there's a lot of individuals who have a lot of hesitancy in being able to say, yes, I want to be interviewed by you, or yes, I would love to be part of this project, because they understand the power of editing, and they understand that if someone isn't, you know, on the up and up, they have nefarious intentions, they could totally create this really repugnant image of you. And so understanding the power that you have and understanding the collaborative process requires all kinds of transparency and openness, and saying bottom line up front when you come and approach anyone with, this is my intention and I will remain true to my intention. I think that's the better way to go about it.
Thank you very much for these lessons and lecture. We had a guest from LCC International University, Misha Cantu-Blake, who is the teacher of filmmaking at this particular university, and also I recommend to watch her movie, The Steam Dream, and we thank you for this sharing of your experience, and also for the answers for our questions. And we are looking forward for our next meeting and lessons properly now with the students of journalism. So stay safe and God bless you. Thank you all.